fellow Amazonian people. And of course, most particularly, if you are a Lebialem out there, I come to you doubling as a son of the county of Lebialem, and not just as your communication secretary. I won't be doing this had Paul Tasong not sought to try to use my good name to cover up his felonious tracks in the recent genocidal killings he masterminded on Saturday, February the 13th, in his village called Esauta. But first, please, may you all, most especially the affected families in Esauta, accept the interim government's heartfelt condolences for the pain you are going through, inflicted upon you, conceived and surgically executed by those who want more power and control. I mean, Paul Tasong and his underlings who remain staged to La République du Cameroon in spite of our collective repudiation of the colonial hegemony. On Sunday morning, February the 14th, while the villagers and the bereaved families at Esauta had barely finished collecting or counting their dead, Paul Tasong rushed out a statement describing what had transpired and naming who instructed the killings. He announced a quasi-funeral service supposedly to console with the people of Esau, whereas it was all intended to project his person as, that Lebialem or this Lebialem leader, apparently acting more like the prime suspect and perpetrator of the killings, and as one who must make sure his parts are covered and accusations diverted at someone rather than him. Paul Tasong took the lead and rushed to announce that the scheme to slaughter the chief of Esauta was ordered from America and by yours truly. But Tasong's drama at a cover-up didn't end there. Again, just what you did expect from a suspect who must make sure he covers his tracks or possible accusations that could be directed at him. On Tuesday morning, February the 16th, Tasong, who would want to be considered grieving more than the bereaved, hurried an insignificant memorial in a museum in Yaoundé. During the event, half attended by fake paid media, Paul Tasong couldn't help to hide his obsession on yours truly. Instead of making the event about the bereaved and the people of Esauta, the people of Lebialem, Paul Tasong made it about me, Chris Anu. What Tasong is trying to cover up, ladies and gentlemen, is your guess and mine. When the event was over, he made sure he stuffed the pockets of the poor reporters with brown envelopes, enough to give him the kind of coverage and screaming headlines he desired. And of course, they did just that. Some of the headlines scream, and I quote, Chris Anu, banish from Lebialem, end of quote. Tasong is mistaken, and I think he actually overrates his popularity, ladies and gentlemen. In his little over-ambitious mind, he thinks he is loved in Lebialem. But put him and Chris Anu together and see who Lebialem people will choose to stone. They will stone Paul Tasong. Paul Tasong is very much aware of the fact that Lebialem people have long uncovered his politics of blackmail, his politics of slander, and murder to get to remain in his slave status in Yaoundé. And so, only lunatics and crooks like him believe a word of what he says. The second problem is that no one takes those his paid reporters and their newspapers seriously at all. Nobody. No one ever quotes them. In Ambazonia, you want some good journalism? Try the Pulse, buy the Voice, buy Eden, the Sun, and the Star. Others just write what they are paid to write. And that's the cheap press that Paul Tasong goes for. Now, let me tell you what exactly happened in Lebialem and the suspects behind the murders, the killings in the village of Esauata. We have since learned of a meeting that took place in Alo, local government area, a week before the killings in Esauata. The killings were conceived at that meeting at Alo. Please note that since this Ambazonia struggle started, like in other parts of Ambazonia, with overzealous CPD and so-called elite, no security meetings hold in Lebialem without the knowledge and consultation or input from Paul Tasong. Paul Tasong is to Lebialem what Gerard Ingala is to Nkambe, and what Paul Atangenji is to Mezam. Ngole is to Kupe Mwaniguba. That is what it is. And you can name the rest. Paul Tasong and his lackeys originally planned the killings in Esauata to happen in Fontem Center. The chiefs in Fontem Center were planned to be attacked and killed, and the accusations, as in Esauata case, would be levied against the Red Dragons. But according to the intelligence sources in the Alo security meeting, an argument came up that should the killings take place in Fontem Center, that maximum outrage against the Red Dragons may not be registered. It was then that the idea of Esauata as a substitute venue was arrived at, and the execution was planned to be such that people will believe the killings were carried out by the Ambazonia Restoration Forces, the Red Dragons. On Saturday evening, February the 13th, I received information of La Republique troops movement into Esauata and immediately put out an audio alert in Bamwa dialect instructing the people in these villages that the troops were invading, French Cameroon troops were invading, that they should escape to the forest. I believe there are Lebialemers listening to me now who received that security alert and can attest to it. However, it only occurred to me after the killings that the alert was late in coming. French Cameroon terrorist soldiers had already arrived the village and taken up positions in the bush. The dragons were in town, but according to witnesses, they didn't arrive till sometime between 10 and 11 p.m. At around 2 p.m., it appears, at around 2 a.m., ladies and gentlemen, it appears that somebody disclosed their hideout, the hideout of the dragons, before they knew it. The place was surrounded by the terrorist soldiers. However, the dragons saw them first as they advanced towards the building in which they were, and they began to unleash fire on French Cameroon. Close to 400 soldiers of them were learned. La Republique soldiers, not brave enough to withstand the fire, as many of them began to crumble to the floor, dead. The rest began to retreat. The dragons, all of them except one, found an escape out of the vicinity. A villager in Esota, still hiding on top of a hill on Sunday morning, the 14th, has disclosed how a helicopter made two trips that morning to transport their dead and the injured from the fierce battle to Chang. He has said he couldn't even count the number of fallen La Republique soldiers in that battle on Saturday. Now, some of you may not have heard this, or it be a surprise to you to hear this account, because those who are making interviews about the incident have not as much as mentioned this. But let me do a little backgrounding here for you. Those of them, and I mean La République du Cameroon terrorist soldiers, on the mission to kill the chiefs, were given two instructions. One, to dress up looking like amber boys, that means the restoration forces the men. And two, to tell the unsuspecting victim, the chiefs, once picked up, that they were Red Dragon soldiers sent by the field marshal with instructions to eliminate them or kill them. They will eliminate them on the pretext, they will eliminate the chiefs on the pretext that the chiefs defied amber instructions and went out to vote during the so-called regional council elections. The storyline will certainly convince the public to believing that indeed, the killers were the Red Dragons. That was the strategy before the killer soldiers took off from Menji. By Saturday evening, the day of the incident, when I sent out the security alert, it was already late. La République soldiers were already there, hiding in the bush. But this is very important. A security source who was at the alert planning meeting had called a number of people in Esota and another village along the same axis, called in car to tip them of the plot. A number of chiefs were called and warned that La République was coming to pick them up, but apparently none heeded the warning, and as a result, these three paid with their lives. They paid with their lives. Paul Tasong and the chief of Esota are now trying really hard to get the freedom-loving people of Esota to point accusing fingers at field marshal and the restoration forces. And some are falling so hard on the fabrications. Yet, only Thursday, the 18th, one more chief in Esota had to escape with his dear life after French Cameroon soldiers went after him. I don't want to disclose his name because that will only further put him in danger. Same yesterday, another civilian in the same village was killed. That was Thursday, by Cameroon troops who are occupying the village as I speak. I just don't understand why anyone will fall for the manipulations of Paul Tasong. Now let me go back to Paul Tasong again, his cronies and their conspiracies. As I stated earlier, Mr. Tasong, like most Amber Anglophones as they call themselves, slaves in La République. They are slaves. Tasong is a slave, is a pimp to La République. Tasong is known to have officiated meetings in Alo and Chang, where they left and got La République police to track down and arrest Lebialem IDPs in Chang. Scores of Lebialem people have been picked up in Chang and dumped behind bars in that foreign land in Chang, and then Bafoussam, Boya, Douala, Kondenge, accused of supporting or serving as middlemen for the Amber Restoration Forces. 6 Lebialem chiefs, including the Esota chiefs, have as of now been killed in the course of this war. All the plots linked to Paul Tasong. 3 of them. Tasong didn't organize any memorial as he did in Yaoundé last Tuesday to cover his tracks. Chief Forestier, for example, was picked up in Chang after Paul Tasong and his cabal rose from a meeting that discussed those who were giving intelligence to the Red Dragons, La Republic intelligence to the Red Dragons. I think that was early last year. Chief Forestier was picked up in Chang, severely tortured before sent to Kondonge, where he again came under even more torture. The chief sustained severe fractures from the torture with bleeding. He was rushed to the hospital from Kondonge, but he died. He died weeks later, and they said the chief died of coronavirus infection. It was a lie. Paul Tasong got him killed. Paul Tasong had earlier in 2019 held 2 other meetings, one in Chang and one in Yaoundé, with other Lebialem slaves in that republic. During those meetings, they deliberated on plans that would lead to the arrest of my 80-year-old mother and my sister. In the meetings, they all agreed that should they arrest my frail-looking mother and sister, that Field Marshal and myself would most definitely give up on the struggle. Lebialem who have been spared all the troubles, and then my mother and my sister would regain their freedom. The same week that my mother was picked up, ladies and gentlemen, one of their lawyers gave me the contact of one General Bankoi. Bankoi, they call him. Bankoi was said to be the person in charge of my mother and my sister. I placed a call to Bankoi, and once he found out I was the one, he got quite excited talking to me. He came across as very friendly and vowed to me that they didn't intend to arrest my mother and blame her arrest on the overzealous agents who carried out the mission. Bankoi then promised to me that on Friday, same week they were picked up, that my mother would be released. But this is the role that Paul Tasong played. When Bankoi said to me that my mother was going to be released, let go, I asked, what about my sister? Is she not also going to be released? Bankoi said that as far as my sister is concerned, that he is not in charge. He then added that it's the big boss that is in charge, and that he will talk to him, he will talk to the big boss about it. About 2 days after, I received a call again from Bankoi early in the morning here in Texas, and he said he was with the big boss, and then asked if I know him. And I said, no, I don't know who the big boss is. Then he retorted, you mean you don't know Paul Tasong? I said, oh, responding that I didn't know he is the boss he was referring to. Then he asked if I would love to speak to him. And I said, sure. Bankoi then passed the phone over to Paul Tasong. And in the characteristic hypocrisy that he wears in himself, Tasong pretentiously lamented, you know how they do, right? Lamented how he learned about the arrest of my family and how he has done everything to get them released to no avail. That is Paul Tasong. However, he will keep on trying, he said. He put up this pretense, thinking I wasn't aware of the meeting in Chang and the subsequent one in Yaoundé, in which they planned the arrest. And he equally wasn't aware that Bankoi had already revealed to me that their being in jail was under the instructions of Paul Tasong. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the same Paul Tasong who just concocted another scheme to the effect that the Red Dragons killed the chiefs in a slaughter. He thinks that no one knows about the meeting in Alo. This is the same Paul Tasong who sponsored the late Ayeke to use in fighting the legitimate Ambazonia forces. But once Ayeke threatened to expose him for not paying them, he revealed Ayeke's hiding and Ayeke was eliminated. This is the same Paul Tasong who, as I speak, is plotting an intertribal war in Lebialem by scheming to get Paul Atanganji moved the headquarters of Lebialem to his village. Lebialem people, you are very brave and smart people. Tasong is busy building an alliance with some first-class chiefs of Lebialem who have since taken up refuge in Yaoundé to get the county, to get our county remain a colony of La République du Cameroon, so that before you pass a concours, you have to go prostrate before his knees. Before you get a job, you have to go bow down and plead for his help. Before you get a contract, you must go pass through Paul Tasong. Before you get promotion, you must go pass through Paul Tasong. Before anything good happens in Lebialem, we go and bow down before Paul Tasong. Is this the kind of leader we want? Of course not. That is why we fight. That is why Lebialem is leading the charge in the prosecution of this war of restoration, and we must continue to do so to the likes of Paul Tasong and others who have stood as obstacles and neutralized, completely neutralized. The death of all the chiefs and people of Lebialem killed under the supervision of Paul Tasong must be avenged, and I mean avenged. Paul Tasong is under the radar. How can you even imagine that Field Marshal will send out people to go out and say he sent them to do what? To kill them? People he has lived among them. How is that even possible, ladies and gentlemen? But that was the plot, and that is how it took place. The person behind Paul Tasong, he is on our radar, and we will let justice to reign.